Hi, this is Elaine Benfield, and welcome to another episode of Herstories. Today, I'm super excited to have I always say one of my favorite humans, but Jen Bartolo joining me. I'm super excited to have you join Her Stories today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, every time I start off, I want to embarrass my guest by saying why someone inspires me. So, this comes so from my heart. So, I first met you and I found you absolutely brilliant. You are so true to who you are, intelligent, outgoing, beautiful, everything. And I liked you. I remember the first impression was like, I want to be friends with her. I really liked you right away. And so I'm happy to say, obviously, we've known each other a long time. You were always so supportive of me, others. You genuinely want to help others. It is, who you are. I find you bring the best out in people. You've always, for me, huge advocate and cheerleader, behind me when there's days I just didn't feel that. And I feel that's a fabulous trait of yours. What I think my favorite thing is watching you find your true happiness, seeing you evolve as a human, seeing you change, go through life challenges. I truly find you inspiring because life is hard, and you've seen me go through things as well. And I just love seeing your true happiness that I've ever seen you. And to me, that's, another reason why you inspire me. So thank you, really truly from the bottom of my heart. But that's what I'd like to get people to know you. So why don't we kick off? That my little embarrassing moments, but let's kick off with who's Jen Bartolo? Tell us more about you.
So I was born and raised in Northern California in the Bay Area, and I bought the house that I grew up in from my parents and raised my two amazing boys in that same house. They're now grown and out of the nest, so they are 24 and 21, or 23 and 21. And God, my older one's going to kill me for that. Um, and
Favorites,
um,
no, favorites begin. Yeah.
exactly. So, went through the normal path, career woman, kind of the married life and all of that. And, have been at SAP for a really long time. That's the company where we met. And, have just built a kind of a nice life for me and for my family. And then life happens, and divorce and et cetera, et cetera. We can go into that whenever it's time to do that.
Yeah.
But that's also made a time kind of in my life where I could just shift gears a little bit and rethink what was important to me. And so I shifted gears in my career as well at the same time, and that led me to where I'm at now, which was from California, then to Idaho for a couple of years, and then on to Montana, where you can see I'm living now, and
I
just loving this place up here. And this is home. California is always going to be home to me because that's where I raised my family and that's where I was raised. But this is now, kind of second generation home, second gen home.
Yeah, second gen home. That's great. So you talked about you had a lot of life changing moments, and you and I have talked a lot about the word change because sometimes you have to have those life moments to change. Can you give people? Because first of all, I love that you bought your parents' house. That to me is, oh my God, like I grew up in, Allentown, Pennsylvania. I would have never had that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And like, I would love to hear, you buying the house and living in the house and like, these moments, wherever you want to begin, because I find that, you've had things that you had to change,
Yeah.
and they weren't easy. So wherever you want us to take it, and then we can keep talking about your life kind of direction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think that there was a lot of, not change in the first half of my life. There was a lot of really consistency. Like I said, following kind of the path. You grow up and you go to college and you meet your, husband or your partner, and you have kids and you buy a house, and that whole journey was pretty textbook. So it didn't require a whole bunch of change. So frankly, I didn't know how to change. I didn't know for myself how to change. I just didn't have any experience with it. That muscle memory
And
in
were
my
you
brain.
at that moment, did you ever think you would have changed, or you were like, oh, not complacent, but
No.
were you comfortable at that stage going, this is good, this is where my life is? Do you reflect now going, you know, that was a good time. It was great at that moment, but then there was more to come. Like, what do you remember about those times?
I remember there was, you know, the time okay, I'm on the path. This is what
Yeah.
was meant for me.
Yeah.
And, and then, kind of, I don't know, your life just expands over time. And as those different, kind of, you get more exposure. I mean, when I joined this company at SAP that we're both in now, international company. I started traveling internationally versus, kind of being rooted in the Bay Area and staying near my home and all of that. And that expanded out for me. So life
Yeah.
just kind of expanded, I remember, and kind of started unfolding for me in different ways. And I
Yeah.
realized at that time when I started to go into kind of a self evaluation of, what do I want this journey to look
Yeah.
like for myself? I
Yeah.
started to just really explore the idea of, maybe the traditional kind of path is not, is not meant for me, which for me the traditional kind of path would have led to a marriage forever till death do you part, all of that. And I don't think I envisioned ever leaving my hometown or leaving the Bay Area or anything like that, until some of those, the unfoldings of my life happened.
Yeah.
And I started to kind of open up my book a little bit more and say, this
Yeah.
there's a world of opportunities, literally a world of opportunities out there. And what do I want to take from that, and what do I want to do with that? This is mine to do with as I please. And am I doing it? It was a good question for myself at the time.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think you and I both had that quintessential, this is the path, and I know this is what I'm going to do. And
Yeah,
when the world around you shifts, you're like, oh, I thought it was this way, but it's not.
yeah,
And that's okay. And you have to go, you know what? It's what I thought it was, but it didn't end up, and that's all right. And I
yeah,
think that sometimes people get so trapped in the, it's what I imaged. Everyone has this perfect utopia. That is not life,
yeah.
and I
It's
think that
not, and
that's,
and I also felt like, and I think probably would resonate with a lot of folks, is that you feel like you're, if you change something, if you're the one to throw a wrench in that works,
yeah,
and you're the one who has had like the picture perfect life, and you've gone on, and you're going to be the one that messes that up, so to speak. Are you,
yeah,
are you going to lose friends? Are you going to lose family? Are you going to, what does that mean for, like, when all of the upheaval that goes on around that, because your family and everything, all of that stuff is your little bubble, and it's
yeah,
on a path, and it's staying in its lane, and then you're the one to just start throwing wrenches in it, and the impact all of a sudden is much broader than what you originally thought when those thoughts originally came into your head, because you worry about, what are people going to think, what is my family going to think, am I now the bad child, am I the one who couldn't make it, and worrying about failures, and me having to sell, speaking of failures, me having to sell my house that I grew up in, that I purchased from my parents, that I raised my boys in, for me
yeah,
felt like such a massive failure to my family. It was necessary to do it as part of this next gen, and
yeah,
it was
yeah,
in, and I took it as that. But man, all the thoughts that went around, my family, are they going to look at me and be like, well, you couldn't even keep your house, you couldn't even keep, like, how did that, and so all of that kind of downstream stuff, or all of that kind of peripheral stuff that isn't there when you originally start thinking, re-envisioning what your life might be like or could be like,
yeah.
that starts to come into play as the dominoes start to fall, and those worries creep in, and that makes it a lot harder. I found
Did you
most of the time
feel,
it's easy
and
afterward.
yeah, and how did you, because a lot of self-doubt must come in going, oh my God, I went this direction. Did I make a mistake? And then you want to backtrack. And then you're like, how did you overcome that? Because that's sometimes the hardest. It's, yes, we worry about our friends and family and what society thinks and whatnot, but it's also, can you do it? Do you have the faith in
Yeah,
yourself that you, Jen, can pull this off and know this is right? Do you ever
yeah.
have that self doubt? Because I think that's resonates with a lot of people. They're like questioning themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's any way around that. I think for me personally, and everybody, like you said, is going to be a little bit different. But I'm a very introspective person. I listen to myself quite a bit, and I talk to myself for better or worse. And frankly, I think I talk with myself quite a bit. And so I think, and probably there's a lot of folks out there who like me are overthinkers at this point, and that can get you into this kind of spinning cycle. But the benefit to having a bit of introspection and an ability to talk with yourself is to reduce that self-doubt, because once I kind of came to the decision on my own that this was
Yeah.
going to be the right thing for me, and it was going to be okay for my boys and for my family and all of that, that that it was okay to really explore it. I wouldn't have explored any of it had I not already had that conversation with myself and thought through how that might go,
Yeah.
and that reduced my self-doubt. But you're never going to get away from the self-doubt. You just aren't. I mean, you're going to always wonder, well, what if I did this, and what if I took this different path? And you know there's no way around it. Just I think you can manage it a little bit better, because all of that is just internal. It's all self-doubt by definition is all internal.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I also think your personality, you take it head on, and I can
Hmm.
imagine you thinking through, here's my process, but in the
Hmm.
end, you just forge forward. Like
Yeah.
you've had, we know some health challenges as well. And it was never, well, like, we actually at one point, if you don't mind me sharing that, a bunch of us had t-shirts made and we were like, hashtag, Bartolo Strong. And all of us wore these shirts. And it was like, there was no doubt in my mind that you are going to thrive and get through it because that's who you are. And
Yeah.
do you get that from your parents? How do you just, it's like warrior mode to some degree that you're like, I got to do this. I'll be fine. Like,
Yeah.
even though once again, we talk about self doubt and you always are concerned about health, but man, you were like, I'm going to do this. And I know there's no other way Bartolo's strong.
Yeah.
So I think a lot about that.
Yeah, I think I mean, look, the most of my the first half of my life was cookie cutter. It really was. I really didn't have a whole bunch of challenges. I played really competitive soccer when I was growing up with a lot of my peers, some of whom may listen to this. Hi guys, but we were on really great teams, and we've made really great teams, and we hardly ever lost. So I always had this really competitive spirit. And again, I didn't have the like muscle skill set in my brains to understand anything different. I was just like, I'm gonna win. I just have to win. And
Yeah.
and everything that I was kind of either I put in front of myself or it came in front of me, I was able to just tackle and
Mm.
then keep moving that ball forward, so to speak. Um, but that being said, literally as you referenced, in the past 5 years, then I had a divorce. I had to sell my family home. My boys were graduating from high school, so I was, that was a whole thing, and helping them navigate that without going into details because I don't want to. But there was a suicide in that scenario with a family member, a very close family member. We consider him family member.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
we had, and then I had the cancer diagnosis. I mean, literally everything. My career decided to change, or I decided to change my career all at that same time. That was in 5 years, just
Yeah,
all
it's
of that.
amazing.
So I took the attitude of Bartolo Strong through all of that, which is everything that's going to get laid out in front of me,
Yeah.
somehow I'm going to find my way through it. I don't know how, but I
Yeah.
do know that on the other side of it is going to be something better, and I'm going to be stronger for it, and I'm going to learn something from this or that or whatever the things are. And
Yeah.
I don't think that had I not had these past five
Mhm.
years, that I really would have had that so ingrained in me now, just the realization that it's put in front of you for a reason. You're going to learn something from it. It's going to be okay on the other side. That's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff in a little package, but
Yeah.
it does. And knowing that every time something like that comes up, you will find the strength. You don't have any way around it. You will find the strength to overcome whatever that hurdle is, and it will be better on the other side. It just always is.
Well, and you and I have talked about it. It's like, some people have one or two things. You and I both in our lives, respectively, different timing, have had like 12. And
Yeah,
people are like, how do you get through it? And it's like, because you conquer one, then you get to the other, and it's like this dance where you're like, you have to. And what do and there's an expression that, people aren't given something they can't handle. And
yeah,
it's like, you could handle it. Did you want to handle it? No, but you're like, I have to get through all these different pieces.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
find that really,
absolutely.
it's very parallel. So then this is one of my favorite stories about, we go through COVID together, obviously other east, west coast, and you were like, rent's so expensive. This is really a hard life. And tell what your next stage, you mentioned it, but to me, all of us are like, she's our hero because you literally were like, I'm moving. And talk
Yeah,
about this, 'cause I love, this is, I mean, incredible. And you're one of the first people I knew that were like, I want to do this. So talk
yeah.
about that journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and it's actually one of my favorite stories because that very quick journey, because all of that's condensed within a certain time, is
Yes.
it really, you know, a lot of amazing stuff happened, even while it was so challenging. But amazing stuff happened during that, and basically, with all of that stuff
Hmm.
happening, I was in this place, kind of in my soul and in my spirit and in everything that was in me, and I was thinking, my life is crazy right now. I used to be the one who drove my life, and I was in the driver's seat, and I could go whatever way I wanted to. Life was happening to me, and it felt very reactive, and it was like just like a prize fighter, like waiting for the next blow to come, and whatever that thing was going to be, I was on my heels waiting for that to happen and ready to fight it, of course. But being on your heels is not a very comfortable place to be at all.
No, no.
Certainly not for folks who are drivers, or who just have had a pretty cookie cutter life. And I really felt like, what, I'm in a place right now where I want to take back over. I don't want to keep on letting life happen to me. I really want to take back over my life. And one of the things that for me personally, is I really, really wanted to get to the mountains. And I always saw myself, being a Northern California girl, I always saw myself in like Lake Tahoe when I,
Yeah.
was is in my older years, and something like that, where there's water and there's the trees. And my parents have a cabin up in the Sierra Mountains, and I always, whenever I needed to decompress, I would always go there
Yeah.
to just take a breath and all of that. So I knew that that was going to be part of my journey at some point. And so I just started looking around. COVID happened. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I was paying this really big rent in California to stay in the town that I grew up in, that I raised my boys in, because my younger son was going to graduate being a senior in high school, and I didn't want to have him have a different address, so he
Yeah.
would have to move schools. So I wanted to keep him in the district. So I was paying an exorbitant, ridiculous rent there, and knew I wasn't going to be able to sustain that myself for solo income now, for a very long amount of time. So during COVID, I talked to my older son. I said, you know what? I want to start looking at places that I could possibly go. I can work from anywhere now. And, let's just take a road trip. And so I looked a little bit on realtor.com and all of that. And so, long story short, he and I, in the middle of COVID, took a jaunt up to a drive up to Idaho, and had a few houses on our list, fell in love with this one. It ended up being a massive house with lots of acreage and all of that, without, having the same, it was actually less mortgage than it was the rent I was paying for the 2-bedroom apartment. So
And
it
it
was
was
nutty. And so I said, of
beautiful.
course.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And so my boys were okay with it. They loved it, even though it was out of state, which made it difficult. They were both out of high school, and they were starting to get on their kind of adult journeys. And so I lived there for a little while, and met a lovely cowboy, a lovely man, who I'm still with today. And we were both kind of in this mode of, Idaho's growing so much, and we kind of both loved it in Idaho because it wasn't so condensed and so, overpopulated and all of that. And it was starting to get that in our area. So we were both thinking about selling the properties respectively. And then he and I did the whole thing. We said, okay, well, why don't we go up and look in Montana? Let's take a look. And we started just as a kind of like a general road trip. We've never been. Let's go take a look. We go up there, loved it, fell in love with it, fell in love with a house we happened to find along the way, and made our way to this house that we're in right now. And it's a beautiful ranch that now I sit out on 20 acres of land looking out over an amazing valley, and we've got 7 horses and a cow and 6 goats and 3 dogs. And it's just, but I can work from here, and I'm close to an airport, and
Yes.
it really is where I was meant to be. And so that was kind of like the move journey.
It is, and it's so. I remember you and I talked, and you're like, "I'm going to go on a road trip with my son," and then you
Yeah.
came back and said, "I'm moving," and I was like, we were all like, "Wow!" Like I just remember snapshots of it, and then of course all of us are in awe with your house in Idaho, and now we're all like even more house envy of like of Montana. I mean, just stunning. And if anyone's friends with Jen, you'll see like she'll post on Facebook and it's like pictures of goats playing and like this beautiful look at the sunrise, and we're all like, we want a team meeting out in Montana. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned something, and we've talked about this before. I've always had an image of who should my partner be, and
Mm,
and I think you and I were very similar, and it's I can truly say this, I've never seen you happier. No offense to like anyone, but like you really
yeah.
are truly happy. But I
Yeah.
remember when we first talked and you said, I met this rancher, and you were like talking about, and you were like, just the way you talked about it, it's funny how we have this image of who we should be with. And
Yeah.
as we get older, you go, hey, it's kind of
Mm,
like life in general. You go, oh, I always wanted this person. And then it's like, no, they're not the right person for me. And
yeah.
I love that. To me, I think that's part of your happiness is this life you maybe never thought you could have with
Yeah.
someone who, you know, when you're in your 20s, you don't know that there's
Yeah.
this other, so I love it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it. So many people when I started posting, on Facebook and stuff, these pictures of us and all of that, and when people were saying that is not who I would have pictured you with, and frankly, it wasn't who I pictured myself with either because I was so involved and so immersed, and so driven by my career and everything to do with high tech software and all of this stuff. And this is a man who is very grounded in his family and grounded in working with the land as opposed to on it. And it's very different than a CEO type or an executive type or
Hmm.
anything like that. And I don't think I would have known that was going to be something for me, or that style or that type or anything, even though the cowboy's kind of cute. I mean, who doesn't think that? But like,
Absolutely.
not him. I mean, he is, but like
No,
in
no.
general, who
Oh,
doesn't look at a cowboy and be like, oh wow? Um,
absolutely. I know it's where we joke like Yellowstone TV show. Now everyone wants a rancher and like wants someone on the land. But anyway.
yeah, yeah. He'll see this and he'll think this is hysterical and be like, you girls. Um, but I think I wouldn't have known that was for me until I had taken this random wild step to I'm going to move to Idaho. I knew nobody. And
Yeah.
nobody in that state until I realized that somebody else had moved there from that little hometown that I was in. But
Yeah.
she's still there in Idaho. But like I just took a leap of faith, saying this is the direction I know I want my life to go. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens. And I made lovely friends along the way, and it just opened my world up even more. So remember back when I was talking about, I went to, came to SAP, and then I was exposed to this whole new world of like Europe and outside of the US and outside of the Bay Area and all of that. And then I was doing the same thing, not knowing it consciously, but doing the same thing when I went to Idaho. I'm like, okay, I know I need to do this. I know I want to do this. And all of a sudden, all of these things that I never even thought
Yeah.
kind of rev- revealed themselves. I was going to say resolved themselves, but they revealed themselves to me.
In some both ways.
Yeah,
Well, and it's
yeah,
also you weren't afraid, and you and I talked about like you're not afraid of the change.
yeah,
You were open to the new world, your new chapter,
yeah,
and that opened you up to all of this for this fabulous chapter. Like it is
yeah,
interesting that once you do let go those barriers and go, I'm gonna take a chance. I'm going to move. I don't know anyone. I know one friend. Like it is
yeah,
an interesting because then it opens up your whole world to so many new things that you didn't even know you wanted, needed, were
yeah,
even out.
yeah. That I didn't even know was out there, and
Yeah.
and if I knew it was out there, I didn't know it was for me.
Yeah.
I knew what was for me. That was at the core of all of it. That I knew what was for me,
Yeah.
but I didn't know everything else that was going to come along the way. And I think you touched on something, a point there that I think is really important to talk about a little bit is the fear of change.
Yeah.
And I understand it, but for me personally, I try not to live in that world where change is something to be feared. I have this really amazing doctor. Yeah, there's therapy involved over all this time.
Same.
Believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there's no mystery there. But he talked to me about like if you do this exercise called "So What" or "What If," and
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of research out there on it that you can look up. But if you have something that you're fearing and you say, "Okay, here's the thing,"
Hmm.
say it's the move. You're fearing the change of making a move to going someplace. What if you don't make any friends? Okay. Well, then, I'll have my friends at work and everything will be okay. What
Yeah.
if you lose your job and you don't have your friends at work anymore? Okay, well, I'll go and get a new job and then I'll be
Yeah.
friends with people that are. So you play this game of like, so what or what if? And when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, you'll really get to the core of what your fear is. Your fear is not the move. Your
No.
fear is about losing something that is so core to you that
Yeah.
but you don't get to that until you unearth that a little bit. And so I've kind of got myself to this point where I treat fear less like fear and I treat it more like it's kind of an anxiety. And I know
Yeah.
anxiety is a big word right now, but it feels less than fear. Fear feels huge.
Yeah.
Anxiety feels like I'm in the moment. This thing is
Yeah.
is causing me anxiousness. And I try and look at it and go, am I anxious or am I excited? Because frankly,
Yeah.
the
It's a
feeling the
yeah.
feeling of
Yeah.
being if you look in yourself and you go the feeling of being anxious physically is almost exactly the same feeling as being excited and and
Yes.
so and, and so then if you want to and if you try to and if you are really not truly anxious about it, you can look at it and you can convert it to I'm actually really excited about this. And what am I excited about? Now,
Yeah.
that's not to diminish anxiety because anxiety is a very real thing. I suffer from it. Lots of people do. That's not I'm not
Same.
saying that this is the be
Yeah.
all and end all for that, but I'm talking about for some of the I say looser things that you get anxious
Yeah.
about than the deep embedded kind of I'm really anxious about this. So that
And
would
it
be my
is,
thing
and
is
I think
converting
like
the fear to something that
yeah.
could be exciting. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I think it is so, no, it's such a great intertwined because it is almost the same emotion. It really is
Yeah.
an interesting, like that pit in your stomach when you get those butterflies, you're really nervous,
Yep.
anxious, and being excited. There are
Sweat
times
a
when I'm
little
like,
bit.
I
Yeah.
do take it. Yeah, and you just, if you take a deep breath and go, wait a second, I know this is what I want to do. And then all of a sudden it becomes excitement versus that, almost crippling anxiety where you're like, nope, I don't want to even try. And it's like, but
Yeah.
once you get over that initial fear
Yeah.
slash anxiety, then you become, but it's hard to balance it. But I see that a lot, especially in
Yeah.
my, current state, that it's
Yeah.
intertwined very often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it definitely is. So from what would what could you tell people to learn from your past experiences? Like, what is
Mm.
the one, from all of this to help people kind of, to learn from you? Because I think you're such a great example of like, you're living your best life. You really, truly, I've never seen you look better, happier. Everyone's, it's not just me, a fangirl, but everyone does see it. What could you help people learn from your past experiences?
Yeah, I could narrow it really down to one thing that is such the oldest, saying in the book, but this too shall pass. It really does. And
Hmm.
what you do with it along that way while it's coming to the point of passing is entirely up to
Yeah.
you. You have control over it. Control is a big thing for me. I need to feel like I'm in control of something, depending,
Yeah.
on what it is I'm trying to tackle. But there's always this ongoing journey that you're gonna go through, whatever the thing is, good or bad. You're gonna go through it, and it will pass. And so, figuring out how to make the best of that stuff in the meantime, all that middle stuff until you get there is for me that's it. That's the good stuff, and it's character building. It's frightening sometimes, it's exciting sometimes, it's all of those
Mhm.
things, but it's also what you make it.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure you're having those conversations with yourself, not to yourself, and so really get to your kind of your reason for doing what you're going to do, and knowing that it's going to be okay on the other side. It really is, I promise. It just somehow it is, it
Yeah.
just resolves
Well,
itself.
and I think it's such a great lesson for our kids because
Yeah,
right now, it is a little bit of a doomsday and it's so hard. And I'm not saying, hey, there's big hurdles going on in the world today, but I keep trying to say to my kids, today's today, tomorrow is going to be a better day, and tomorrow the
yeah,
next day will be a better day. And it's hard, we all have hard days, but it's in just a small period of time. And yes,
yeah,
there's always something, but it's hard because right now I always feel like kids are like, there's so much burden on them that I think you and I didn't have when we were growing up to this
yeah,
level. And it's
yeah,
like, it really will pass. And it's hard. And I keep echoing. I had that conversation last night with my one child saying, it's okay. You feel overwhelmed today, but tomorrow you'll be all right and we'll help you. And
yeah,
then today was better. I was like, told you. But it was
yeah.
nice to be like, and I'm sure you feel the same with your sons. Like it is trying to explain, like, there are hurdles, but it's how you get over it and not let that be all consuming.
And also to remember that how you're dealing with that certain amount of thing. I've got John's granddaughter here, and she was really anxious about moving because they moved up to Montana at the same time, and she was really anxious about moving from Idaho and losing all of her friends and all of that. At the time, she was 7,
Yeah.
and I remember her being real and just having conversations with her. She was so anxious about it, and then we got here, and she loves it here now. She loves everything about it here. She's made new friends here. She's gone to a new school, and all of that. She was super excited to go back to school. Except for the day before, she said, I'm really kind of anxious and kind of nervous. I'm kind of scared of going back to school tomorrow, even though she's the most
Yeah.
social butterfly there is and has all the friends in
Yeah.
the world. And I said, remember how you felt when you were scared about coming to Montana, and here you are and how happy you are? Well,
Yeah.
you're going to feel like that, and try and remember that. Try to remember that every time
Yeah.
you're going to go through something like this, that you're going to have all these memories to look back on and experiences to say, that was tough back then, but it got better. This was
Yeah.
tough back then, and it gets better. And
Yeah.
and for some, you can't tell a 7 or 8 year old that that it's all because they don't have that frame of mind. But for somebody who's going to be listening to something like this, it's how many times can you look back at your life and find that that it was really really tough, and then you moved ahead, and you got past it, and you got something from it,
Yeah.
presumably, and that
Yeah.
you grew from it, and keep on remembering those things where you overcame it, and then
Yeah.
and then that makes it, whenever this next thing comes up, or whenever you get over this particular hurdle that you're kind of trying to get over right now, that's going to come back again, because it just repeats itself and it repeats itself, and you just try and stay strong as you can through it, and be confident and know yourself that you're going to make it through it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it's I've over the last year started writing like a private blog just for me, and
Hmm.
now I can reflect and go, "Oh shit, that was a hard moment." But then you look, and then the next one got a little better, and you see all the moving, and then there was the peaks and the valleys. But it is nice to sometimes reflect and go, "I didn't think I could make it," and you can, and then you
Yeah.
thrive, and then and those are I do think you can't forget. I
Yeah.
really agree with that, that it is a learning because life is all about like learning and growing and everything. So I do think that that's a really important piece. You don't want to forget it,
Yeah.
and learn from it.
Yeah.
So,
And use it. Just use it. Don't forget
yes.
it. It's a tool for you. All of whatever you're going through that you will get through is a tool for you. It's teaching you something about yourself, about the world, about whatever it is. You're learning something out of it, and it's going to be a tool that you'll come back to later.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So if you could, I have a few more questions. If you could do something different from your past, what would you do? Like what now knowing and reflecting? Would you have moved earlier? Would you have like what would it have been knowing this is where you are today? Is there something you would have done differently? And life is, obviously you can't, it's hindsight, but is there
Yeah.
something you're like, oh, should have done this?
I don't think I would say I should have done this, but I do say I would have been gentler on myself. I would
Mm-hmm.
have been kinder to myself and given myself more grace. I
Yeah.
was really hard on myself about a lot of things that probably didn't need to be on my shoulders, but I took
Yeah.
on because that's who I am, and I'm
Yeah.
also a mother, and you tend to take everybody's stuff on and put it in your backpack so that everybody else doesn't have to carry it in their backpack. Um, and we do it subconsciously a lot of times. And I think I probably took on more of other people's stuff than
Yeah.
I necessarily needed to. So I
Yeah.
think I would have been kinder and gentler with myself and given myself more forgiveness to let some of those things let other people own those things that were theirs to own and not try and solve those things for them and let them take those in their
Yeah.
backpack wherever they were going to go. And because my backpack doesn't have room, I'm going in this direction.
Yeah. No, that's a great. And it's also sometimes you want someone to carry your backpack. Like
You
I
know what? You
realized,
do. You
and
do.
I feel like that with a mother because it's like we're always carrying everyone's backpack. It's like, hey guys, can you just hold my backpack for like 5 minutes? It's like you take it on, you take it on. There's something I just am convinced we do. You and I are very similar.
Yeah.
And that I do. So it is sometimes I'm like, can you just hold this for me just for a minute? It's like I
Even though
need to,
you're strong, even though you're strong enough to hold it, you know you're
yes,
strong enough to hold it. But
yes,
it just feels nice to let somebody else. And by the way, asking for somebody else
yes.
to hold your backpack is one of the hardest things that
I'm
is.
still learning.
I still
And I
learning
don't
too.
I don't ask and raise my hand. And now
I don't.
and we talked about therapy. My therapist is like, why? Why do you do? And I'm like, because
Yeah.
no. Your answer is no. And I'm like, no. I just try to
Yeah.
say it. My one
No.
kid,
Yeah.
I have a kid who keeps saying, why are you not just saying no? And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, well,
Yeah.
sometimes you do. And I think as like now, as I get older, I'm like, oh, I can say no and someone else can help me. And I think
Yep.
that that's really age it does give you the wisdom of like, yeah, someone else can hold your
Oh,
backpack.
wouldn't you love to have that when you were 20 something?
Oh, I can't even like everyone. What is it like? The youth is wasted on the young. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, all the lessons. I love this age. I really
Me
do
too.
believe you really come into your own more. I'm
Yeah.
happier. I feel better. Like it's a very cathartic. Because people are like, wouldn't you go back to high school? Absolutely not. Nope.
No. I
Happy where
love
I'm
all
at.
you high school friends. I do.
Love
But
them.
no,
Yes.
I wouldn't.
No.
Mm-mm.
They can be my friends now at my current age. Um, so you mentioned recently to me something that you're excited about doing that you're now in Montana, and talk to me about. And I'm going to say it's about horses. You are also braving kind of something new that I think is amazing. That you're also picking up new hobbies and new activities. Is tell me about that, but then any other experiences you're excited about your new world living in Montana and like, what are things you want to do?
Yeah, I'm learning every single day, and thankfully I have the best teacher in the world who knows. He doesn't know Montana itself; he's learning it himself.
Yeah.
But he knows everything about ranch life and working with large animals and little animals and all sort of manner of critters. But I am learning. He's teaching me how to ride horses. I've never really done that before, so that we can go trail riding in these beautiful mountains that are surrounding us. And I can join him, when he goes on. He's actually oh gosh, he's going to kill if he sees this. He actually does rodeo, so he does team roping, competitive team roping, and
So
recently won some money on it. And not very much
that's
for
amazing.
it. What's that?
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
super
it's
cool.
it. So I'm learning everything about rodeo too at the same time. But he's been around horses all of his life, and so with all of these horses out here, I all this land and all that. I want to learn how to do that. But also at the same time, those same trails are available for hiking. And for me, in the past, troubling 5 years, I've also picked back up running. I can't play soccer anymore because my knees are bad and stuff like that. But I've picked up running, and so I'm doing trail racing and running road races and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And when I say running them, I
And you
don't
just
mean
did one.
like, yeah,
You just did one, right? You did well in that one, right? How proud of you are. I mean, that's amazing.
yeah, yeah. It was fun. It is just you get to do all this just different stuff that you didn't know that you would have, the abilities to do. I mean, I didn't think my knees would let me run anymore. And now I'm out, weather permitting, out running all over the place and signing up for these races to get motivated towards something. And it's building my friend network and my community. And Montana is very community oriented. So getting to know all of these people in this amazing, kind of valley that we live in. And it's really fantastic. Just exploring everything new.
Well,
Everything is new to me.
and something also old, you told me you used to camp, and now that
Mm.
once you go riding on the trails, you can actually go camping then, and that
Yep.
could be a part of it. And I'm like,
Yep.
but you said you missed doing that. And I
Yep.
loved hearing that because I used to do that as a kid, and now I do the glam thing more. But I would love to have an opportunity to like go riding and have that, I'm a little like, I'm not going to do what I did when I was younger in the Poconos, but I love that that was something you loved. Now you're
Yeah.
adding that back into the mix as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. It's so it just to walk away from your technology, take these technology breaks. I mean, I'm learning that every day, and um, how open that gets me to walking the freedom of being able to walk away from my technology for a minute and just say, you know what, my lunch break, I'm going to go down and visit the horses, or I'm going to go down and sit with my goats for a little bit, and I'm not going to hear cars and I'm not going to hear a city. Don't get me wrong, people. There are those are those things for certain people. I love going to the city, but I love coming away from it. And for me, finding my peace out here where it's nice and quiet. Some people need the fire engines and the noise and all of that, and they're not at peace unless they have that, and that's fantastic. Here, I get to go out and sit where it's you know just perfectly quiet and just walk away from the technology for a minute, and it'll
And
always
it
be
gives,
there when I get
and
back.
it gives you the balance because you and I have worked around
Yeah.
the clock, and as we get older, it's like
Mm.
"Ugh, I just don't want to do that anymore. I've done the
Yeah.
grind. I've
Yeah.
earned my badges. I just
Yeah.
now it's the balance of, as you said, what makes you complete. Work's
Yeah.
great, but it's not, I'm sure your kids feel the same. They always say they want to work. They want to have their lives. They don't want
Yeah.
work being all encompassing. And I think they're learning a lot faster than I did to
Oh
go,
yeah.
you know what, work is not everything. And I didn't feel in the 20s that was I was identified by work. And now I
Yeah.
look
Me
going,
too.
no, sitting and taking a break and taking my dogs, I'm learning to take my dogs for a walk more. I used to always
Yeah.
say, oh, I have to do no. I want to do it. It makes me happy.
And
As
it makes
you
them
having
happy.
makes them
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
So I could, of course, talk to you forever, and I'd love to have you back. I just love always talking to you and learning from you. And as I always say, you really do. You've inspired me and helped me more than I can even put into words. And I'm always grateful and thankful for you. I want to leave you with one last question. So, what
Yes.
empowers you? What inspires you as for Jen?
Well, I've learned that nature inspires me for sure,
That's
and
right.
that there's strength in nature. That there is something, and regardless of what you believe, and everybody's got a little bit different, but it
Mhm.
makes me believe that there's something bigger out there than me. It reminds me that I'm just this one person in this bigger, kind of cog, but that I still have something to bring to the table in that, and that I am part of it, and even if it's such a small part with everything else, the mountains and the trees and the massive animals and all of that, that I still am part of that group, and I find strength in myself that I can contribute to, being part of that, and you know so I guess nature is probably the answer to that question.
But it's so true because, as we talked about earlier, seeing what your background is, how can that not empower you to get back to the, as you said, to work with, the land and be part of the land and have
Yeah.
that, and these amazing animals that, you take care of and are growing. And it's really, it's such a great life. And you deserve it more than I can say into words. So,
Oh,
um,
thank you.
thank you so much for joining Her Stories. I hope you come back another time, and there's thousands of other topics we can talk about. But it's been a pleasure, Jen. Thank you, and I know that you will inspire people as much as you inspire me.
Oh,
Thank you, sweetie. All right, goodbye, everyone, and I will stay tuned for another episode of Her Stories coming up soon.